Hello, and welcome to the hashtag Here2Hear, Keeping It 100 podcast. My name is Damon Naylor, and I'll be serving as the host. I am the membership enhancement facilitator for NAFCM, and I'm joined by my co-host, DG Mon, the president of NAFCM. Hello, DG, what's going on?
Hello, Damon. How are you doing?
Doing excellently. I cannot complain. I'm just trying to stay cool.
So who do we have today? Who's going to help us stay cool today?
Oh man, we have a spectacular guest by the name of David Brandon, and he's out of Berkeley, California. David is the managing director of the JAMS Foundation. And at the heart, he's a significant advocate for the mission and vision of community mediation. So that's who we're rocking with today, DG, and I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation. Are you ready?
I am absolutely ready. I flew back from Quito for this, so let's go. Bring him in.
Let's get it. Let's get it. We're going to bring this amazing guy in. Here he comes.
There
Hello.
he is.
Hello and welcome, David. How's it going?
Doing all right. Thank you for having me. Good to see you both.
Yes, we thank you for being a part, and I've just shared some biographical information with the audience. We want you to share some as well, just any personal information about your background that you would like them to know.
Well, I'm not sure how much you said about me, but I assume at least my name and current position with the JAMS Foundation. It was just an interesting arc that got me here, and so I'm happy to tell you more about that story. Part of it certainly starts for me with the, just what my education was and the detours that I took along the way. I had gotten my bachelor's degree in philosophy at UC Berkeley and then went on to law school there. One of the things that became clear to me over the course of my time at law school is I was not destined to be a lawyer, and I wasn't quite sure what the arc out of that might be. Mediation, the dispute resolution field was not all that developed at the time. So, my very first job out of law school was working for a general contractor, learning to be a tile setter and stonemason, which provided a lot of skills that have served me well throughout my life, not necessarily in my current work with the foundation, though there are linkages there too. But it took a while for me to sort of find an inroad in terms of, paid work in the dispute resolution field, in the mediation field. But in the meantime, one of the first things that I did out of law school was to go through a community mediation training program, a 35, 40-hour training with an organization that was then known as Conciliation Forums of Oakland in the East Bay in California. And that was transformative to me. That gave me not a brand new language. I mean, I grew up in a good setting that kind of already gave me some good communication and life skills. But it really did kind of give it a context and an avenue for using that language and those skills to just help my neighbors, my fellow community partners. And so I engaged in that work for several years just as a volunteer mediator. Long story short, at the end of, that full 25-year arc of working in the dispute resolution field that started with being trained as a community mediator, I am now proud and still amazed that I get to occupy the role that I do as a funder of community mediation work, not, necessarily working at the same grassroots level, but feeling the same engagement with it, the same commitment to it. And just a remarkable pleasure that the arc that started with volunteer work has now become just a meaningful part of my own personal life and my work with the JAMS Foundation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that amazing introduction and all of the information, your background there. I find it very interesting, just all of the hats you've worn and how destiny has basically put you on this path and brought you to where you are. And we are so excited and happy that you're doing what you're doing as far as supporting community mediation. So hats off to you. And what you stated basically kind of segues right into our first question, is in how can you, or what suggestions do you have or tips you have for individuals on how they can pursue life paths that interest them, particularly those that express or enable their priorities, passions, and values? Because you didn't just jump into this but I can tell by your energy and excitement that this is your passion.
It is, but in a sense, it took me a while to realize just how natural a place that could be in both my personal and professional life. So one thought in terms of pursuing it, your starting point should be not what are the external pressures on you to make a good living or follow in your ancestors' footprints and follow for other people's paths. But to at least start with the starting point of what does energize you, what do you feel connected to? If you had the chance to channel whatever energy you have into work you do, what directions would that take? So for me, as I say, I started out in the university. I was a psychology major and then a political science major. And when I transferred to Berkeley, and they said, you really want to be here, political science? And I said, well, I don't know. I'd actually spent a lot more time studying philosophy than anything else. And my own political science advisor had said, well, then you should get out now and kind of do what you want. You're an undergraduate. You got time to kind of sort through the rest, but start with what motivates you, what interests you. And the next day I switched to the philosophy department and got a bachelor's accordingly. And sort of law school was a similar revelation for me, in the sense that I entered in good faith saying, I have in a sense, an appropriate skill set to do legal work as an advocate or in, other settings. But what I came out of that believing is that while we have a justice system, an adversarial justice system that works in the ways that it does, and has issues of certainly, that wasn't my role. I wasn't in a position to want to be strongly on one side or another, when temperamentally it was just so easy for me to stand in other shoes or see through other lenses. How are you a zealous advocate if you can just fluidly say, well, I see where you're coming from on that other side? And the world of mediation allows for that in a way that being a zealous advocate in litigation doesn't. It allows you to embrace kind of the wholeness of a situation, the multiple perspectives of the people involved. And it also allows you to be a helper and a facilitator in issues that arise, but not to have to be the decider in other people's lives. Again, temperamentally, I'm not a good decider. I'm not a good judge. But I'm a great helper. I'm a great, source of counsel if someone wants to look in my direction. But I ultimately want them to feel the power in their own lives to do what they think best for themselves. And mediation in so many ways offers a channel to convey that message, to be the helper I want to be, but ultimately to help lead others to resolutions and decisions that work best for them.
Okay, awesome. So I would say with your journey, basically the tips or suggestions would be to have that open mind, to be flexible, and to not, like you said, allow the external pressures of trying to fit into somebody else's role or travel the same path that somebody else has traveled, but find your own passions, right? What wakes you up in the morning? What just feeds you and excites you and fuels you, and it's just something that you love. And I'm a coach, and I typically try to tell people, look, find whatever it is you're passionate about doing, and if you can find a profession that matches that skill set and those gifts and talents, then it will be like you're not working. And that's critical, especially if you're going to be doing this for so many years. You don't want to burn out, but at the same time, have that flexibility and confidence to be willing to pivot. Because as you stated, you've gone through different, phases and just different arenas you've been in. But at the heart, you love people, you love helping, you love serving. Am I right?
All true. But I'd also say it's not necessarily an easy arc just because you're pursuing your own dreams and your own enthusiasms. I mean, there's plenty of twists and turns that, that are challenging along the way. But as you were saying what you just said, it kind of brought to mind a quote from Carl Jung, one of my favorites there's many, but, appropriate here. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on somebody else's path. which is really just to say, like, don't expect it to be like the smoothest, clearest, straightest thing, but it's yours, and it's yours to sort through, it's yours to wander around and figure out. And so embrace those challenges, you know, the twists and turns, because they're just part of that.
Yes, yes. It's definitely not a straight line. You go and make pit stops in all kinds of places, and you end up sometimes making detours. And sometimes the detours are actually not detours, as in taking you off the route, but it'll somehow come back and bring you into the path or into alignment with what you intentionally and originally set out to do. I'm a witness of that, but it's all about having that vision and that purpose, that why behind what you're doing. Did you have anything you wanted to add on this?
I will add one other detour, just to the extent that it kind of rounds out a picture. For several years, in the midst of a 30-year dispute resolution career, it's become a career. I didn't see one coming, but there it is. I was a gardener and a landscaper, to the point where I had my own gardening and landscaping business, which I did for several years. Tremendously gratifying work, until it sort of started wearing me down, because it's incredibly physically demanding work. But even then, when I pivoted back into mediation, into working with the JAMS Foundation and other dispute resolution efforts in that arena, my desk, the cubicle in my desk, had about 40, 50 potted plants. They basically, like, I took that what seemed like a detour and made it a meaningful part of my environment in the office, in dispute resolution, and that became a source of energy and plant propagation on its own. So now colleagues in mediation to me are now the proud owners of plants that came out of that dovetailing of my two careers. And so again, what seemed disparate, what seemed like kind of going off a track, right now really seems like, you know, just a synthesis of all the good things that have happened along the way. And to anybody, you know, whatever your experience has been to date, find the kernels that were helpful, valuable, meaningful to you, and see how those might weave into where you are now.
I think something, David, as you reflect back on what's valuable to you, it reminds me of a quote from Jose Marti that said, "El único autógrafo digno de un hombre es el que dijo escrito en sus obras." In other words, our signature by the works that we do. In all the work that you've done with your empathy, with your helping and facilitating, what is the one thing that you look back on that really represented your signature and left a mark of David Brandon in the world?
I don't know if I have a big moment. I think my answer is countless small moments, countless just instances of paying attention at moments where it seemed important to pay attention in a certain kind of way, and you know, and ultimately being here now, whatever that may mean to any of us. It's really trying to maintain a certain kind of presence and attentiveness and connectedness and kindness at every level and every moment. So, I mean, there's, you know, with the JAMS Foundation, I've been proud to be part of larger initiatives that have had, you know, national and international effect and impact and exposure. And that is some deeply gratifying work. As I say, my work with the foundation is just, you know, a remarkable state of being, considering I didn't see it coming along the way in my life, and now it is truly a defining feature of what I value most. And so those big successes, you know, one, they weren't just mine. Those were part of, you know, just collaborations and much greater efforts than my own. But to the extent that you're asking about me, it's really trying, in a sense, to not so much differentiate between the big and small moments, and to bring that presence and attentiveness to just everything that happens day to day over the years.
Yes.
Did that answer the question?
I believe it did. Go ahead, DJ.
Beautifully.
Yeah, so every moment, every spot, every profession you work in, every activity is all connected to the bigger picture, right? The bigger scheme of things. And as you said, you've carried all of those things along and received different elements, received different insight in each period that's now relevant to what you're doing. Tremendous. That is wonderful. Okay. So I ask one more question. How does community mediation play a vital role in helping to address the personal and societal conflicts that seem to be dividing us today?
I mean, I appreciate that at the you know, the just the local grassroots level, the community mediation centers operate. They're there in just such a frontline way to be available, to be willing to be, you know, to have the training and the orientation to bring something constructive to conflicts and disputes in all sorts of different forms. When I was trained as a community mediator, they were mostly party-to-party disputes. They were neighbors over, you know, dog barks and leaves falling on lawns and things like that. They were pretty isolated between individuals, even though the subject matter of those disputes would vary. They weren't generally, at least the ones I was involved with, they weren't group-based, they weren't community-wide, they weren't addressing what we see happening today, which is just long-standing and broader-based tensions and unresolved issues that are, you know, coming to the fore in all sorts of counterproductive ways, whether it's through just violent incidents or violent protests in response to those incidents. We've sort of lost our fluidity and our fluency in terms of trying to understand other perspectives, or lost interest in trying to do so. And so one of the evolutions I see with community mediation generally, and just maybe other efforts outside of the community mediation arena, is a desire and a need to be a conduit for these larger tensions, these larger conflicts. And community mediation centers, I think, are situated in their locality and their knowledge of just, you know, the communities in which they're based, to not just broker individual disputes, but to really be a safe and fertile ground to bring together the groups, the organizations, the demographic, you know, partners that need to talk constructively to be able to move forward constructively. And more I see that, whether it's over, you know, election related issues or, you know, police community tensions. You know, there's many arenas in which I'm pleased to see people trying to facilitate discussions and find new resolutions and new partnerships to be able to make a difference in that arena. With mixed results. I think, you know, these are generational problems and traumas, and it's going to take quite a while to work through them. But I see a lot of efforts, both local and, you know, regional, national, on a lot of levels. There's a recognition that we're already at a tipping point, or reaching a tipping point of polarization that is just untenable. And for those of us that drank the mediation Kool-Aid a long time ago, we know better than to think that those divisive perspectives are the defining perspectives, or that they need to be, that there's just much broader commonalities and much more that we would share than that we should be fighting over, and we've simply lost sight of that. So I'm grateful to community mediation centers for being kind of the grassroots frontline articulators of that safe space, that need for productive conversation, and for their willingness to hold that place in the name of making things better.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it's really great that they're, like, say, positioned and poised to deal with what I would say is today's complexities of the landscape that we have, and the issues that we're facing now. Would you say it has really had to expand the work and services of the community mediation centers?
I mean, what I see from my vantage is that they're ready and willing to take up the challenge. Some of them are already doing this work. Some of them are just not sufficiently known in their communities. So, you know, there's current outreach efforts, just to say, hey, in case you didn't know we're here, we are here and we can help. And I think, NAFCM's relationship and its role in aggregating those individual voices into a national voice to say this isn't just something that your community is facing. These are big issues and they're common issues, and there's tools to do something about. So again, our partnership with NAFCM has been just a proud and remarkable exploration of where are the areas of need, and how can we best disseminate good things to help address those challenges.
Yes, awesome. DG, did you have anything else you want to say?
No, not at all. I'm thrilled to hear what you're saying, and it does remind me that the light that shines on us is a reflection of the light that's around us. And that's really what I'm hearing you say, David, in the work that you do. So just inspired.
Well, and to that point, I will say, as a funder, you get a lot of good feedback from people and organizations that you work with and support. And I get that and I appreciate that. My pretty common and sincere and authentic response to that is really like the bigger thank you back. I am glad to be able to offer whatever financial and technical support we can for the work that we're connected to. But I look through the lens of the organizations, the people that we're supporting, they're doing the work, they're generating the vision to do that work. They're interfacing with the hard constituencies that are breaking through to the other side or trying to do so. And I am grateful for that, because that's the harder work, to be a supporter of that, to be a booster of it. I'm grateful for my role, but that's kind of the easy part. The hard part is doing the work. And so mine is a steady position of gratitude toward all of our partners, all of the organizations we've had occasion to work with, because I know the commitment that takes to work through those challenges, and to just really stay committed to a more productive future.
Well, I hope in your words, David, it's inspiring not just the community mediation centers that Damon's referenced, but that individually we can have that heart of a community mediator, which is what you're revealing here in this conversation, this podcast. But I hope for those that are listening who aren't a part of a center, who want to make a difference, who aren't quite sure how to make a difference, to know that desire to make a difference, to facilitate, to help, to be empathetic, as you've described, is that kernel to move forward. And using the quote you provided, if the path is not clear, that means you're on the right path, and just keep moving.
Yes, awesome. Well, you guys have been great, and this time passes by so fast. We appreciate you, David, for being our guest. Before we close, is there any final thoughts or final words you would like to share with the viewers?
Given this opportunity and given that this is a NAFCM sponsored event, really just want to encourage anyone listening to say there are just a lot of good ways to engage with and to support community mediation, from, going through just, some kind of training and serving as a volunteer, which is just, again, a tremendously gratifying way to help your neighbors, help yourself, help your community. To work in a community mediation center, doing all sorts of things that they may need help with, even if you're not necessarily wanting to sit down as a mediator. If you're working with people and organizations that have challenges that might, mediation might be of service to, let them know that there are local centers that would be happy to kind of engage and reach out to see if there's a conversation to be had there. If you're, a partner that can be a liaison with a community mediation center that can help them connect with other community organizations, community members, to let them know that there is a resource to just kind of help them work through issues either before they result in a dispute, or at least to work through the dispute once it emerges. And so just to know that they are there as a resource, and in whatever way your interest and life circumstance allows, to just be a conduit for letting mediation centers do their work, and to let the rest of the community know they're out there and happy to serve.
Perfectly stated, perfectly stated. Did you have any closing remarks?
I cannot top that.
Okay. Well, we thank everyone for viewing hashtag Here to Hear, Keeping It 100 podcast. I'm grateful for my co-host DJ, and we're grateful for our guest, David Brandon. We hope that you continue to tune in. We have some great episodes that are coming in the future. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you both.